Hello, dear friends, and welcome to the Found Humanity podcast.
Hey, what's
girl,
good,
what's
man?
new with you?
The hell was that
No, I
supposed to
literally
mean?
cannot understand.
Why is he always
It just
trying
seems
so
like
hard?
she isn't even trying.
Might
So
just be a
why should
difficult
I?
time for him.
I'm pretty sure she knows everyone hates her.
You know, I've never really thought of it that way.
I guess I could see that.
But then I realized I'm just like
her.
him.
The aim of this podcast is to do in-depth explorations of the stories, experiences, and insights from strangers who I meet in public while traveling. Everyday people whose joy, honesty, and authenticity feels like a glass of cold water on a hot day. My goal for listeners of this podcast is for them to feel refreshed, inspired, and hopeful, but also to have their feathers ruffled, as well as my own. What I mean by that is I want this to be a space that reflects the values of exploration, courage, and radical honesty, both from myself and from each guest. I believe that true intellectual and psychological exploration requires people to encounter new information and new ideas, and to discover how those ideas relate to and inform who we are. Most of our friendships and online spaces we're a part of today encourage us to engage with ideas that confirm our pre-existing beliefs that are already welcome in our personal circles and echo chambers. This podcast and all of my associated content aims to work in gentle and relational opposition to that trend, inviting the listener to see each interviewee exactly as they are. A random, everyday human being who has their own set of experiences, beliefs, talents, and limitations, just as we all do. In this laid-back, sometimes humorous, and casual context, coupled with brave personal questions and even braver responses, my hope is to invite listeners into an experience where curiosity and compassion exist on the surface of each discussion, where no question or response is off limits. Because I truly believe that becoming a less judgmental and more self-compassionate person requires being exposed to different experiences and information that does ruffle our feathers and agitates our judgments, and forces us to ask ourselves, why is it that I feel the need to divide myself from people who behave or believe differently than I do? In the presence of deep honesty and courage, my hope and my prayer is that listeners like you would feel comfortable and safe enough to discover deeper levels of compassion. Compassion towards the guests, towards me, the host, as I fumble through each conversation, and most of all, towards yourself as you begin to identify and welcome the fullness and the complexity of your own human experience. That in the process of recognizing and releasing judgments, and possibly even forgiving yourself or other people, you would begin to feel more aware of who you really are, a flawed but worthwhile human being. And most of all, I hope and pray that you might begin to feel more at home within yourself, around the people in your life, and in any situation that you find yourself in. At the time of my filming this, I have only recorded one podcast, which means that everything I've just shared is still truly a vision and a heartfelt intention. It also means that should you choose to stick around and listen to this podcast or to watch my other content, you'll get to see this entire journey unfold. In a way, you'll be participating in a living and evolving story of finding out what humanity is really like. It's a story that we can all influence, where each person plays a unique role in creating the kind of world that we want to live in. For me personally, I want to contribute to making a world filled with people who are deeply curious, genuinely compassionate, and who possess a deep clarity and drive for connecting with all kinds of people, regardless of any differences that might otherwise be the cause of judgment, division, or hatred. In closing, I'd like to offer one final idea. Many of us feel alone. I often feel alone. I'm 31 years old, I live by myself in this van, and I have a small family. And I recently lost my father in June. The feeling of being alone isn't some far-off or abstract idea for me. It's something that I'm reminded of on a regular basis, and it's only amplified by the kinds of content that we see online. In an online landscape that highlights conflict, division, violence, and polarization, it's no wonder why we feel so cynical and so fearful of other people. It's no wonder why we've seen such a noticeable shift in people's behavior towards being cynical, closed off, sarcastic, and defensive. More and more people act in these ways towards strangers that they don't even know, and even more so towards people who they decide are different and don't deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. At the core of all these behaviors is fear, which has a self-fulfilling and cyclical kind of energy to it. And one of the greatest costs that we can't see when we live in fear is that it leaves us completely isolated from our friends, our family, and especially from strangers. And there are and always have been very smart, powerful, and sometimes even well-meaning people who harness the power of fear to keep people angry, cynical, subdued, distracted, and disconnected from their own sense of personal power. But against all of these forces and powers that wish to keep us bound in a personal hell of judgment, fear, and cynicism, there's hope. My personal why for doing all of this is because my greatest source of hope in this life is found in simple human curiosity and connection. If there is a God or some higher intelligence that guides this universe, I believe that it is present in human curiosity and connection, and that it uses it as the most basic tool for good in the world. I believe, because I have seen, how genuine curiosity about another person or experience can break down those forces of judgment, fear, and cynicism. And after years of working in conflict resolution and witnessing unbelievable acts of forgiveness, I know that even the most justifiable instances of judgment, fear, and cynicism, which hold people in a personal hell, can be released when they open their heart and mind to another human being. This choice of curiosity, of releasing judgment, and sometimes forgiveness, is the most powerful catalyst for good that I've seen in my lifetime, and it's what inspires me to wake up each morning looking for where I can find the curiosity and compassion in people all around me. So, if you're someone who has ever felt afraid of other people, who has ever judged other people, or has been afraid to face certain parts of yourself because you've never felt safe enough to talk about them, I hope you'll follow along on this journey in these conversations of openness, of courage, and of radical honesty. Through these stories and experiences, I hope that you will find healing from your own self-criticism, judgment, and self-protective behaviors, that you will be honest with yourself, that you will experience joy, and that you'll discover an abiding hope for humanity. To sum it all up in closing, I hope that by finding humanity, you can discover a feeling of home within yourself and within the world, realizing that there isn't a single person who is a stranger if you can trust that there is a way to find the humanity that you share. So let's dive in together, and let's find humanity.